And a good off-season Monday, Birds fans. We are truly in the off-season now. You got Johnny Mac and Jody Mac, Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. Last Monday was the day after the Super Bowl. You're still talking about on-field action. This is the first week of our off-season lives, Johnny Mac. We gotta come up with stuff to talk about because this is a downtime. The NFL New Year doesn't start for 4 weeks when transactions can actually be made, free agents can be legally tampered with. We got the combine coming up, which will be good and give us lots of guys for speculation who could become Philadelphia Eagles via the draft. But this is it. This is the offseason. This is where McDonald and McMullen kind of take over, and you guys on the stream, if you want to chime in and feel free. What will the Eagles be doing, even though they're going to do nothing basically for the next month of the season? Correct?
Well, they've still got some work to do. They got to finish up their coaching staff, which is taking forever. You mentioned 4 weeks. It's actually 3 weeks until, so people are speculating about free agents already. When Eddie Jackson, somebody like that, shakes from the tree, all of a sudden people, he used to play for Big Fangio. So, that kind of stuff comes into play. The NFL is really good at setting up the calendar. I talk about it all the time, and they're ready to go with the next thing. And that's why it's not the only reason why they're number one, but I think it's an underrated reason why, because they're never far away from the front of people's minds, because they set this thing up so perfectly to where there's always something to discuss.
There is, and we'll discuss it. That's what we'll do the next 3 weeks on Birds 365. But actual moves, they will not be made. Speculation can run rampant, and we'll try and help that along with our opinions and what we're hearing and everything else. But there is nothing actual that can get done over the next 3 weeks. But talk about rampant speculation. We'll start that today. Eric Edholm is going to join us from NFL.com, one of their regular writers and draft analysts, and he'll be in Indianapolis. I think a lot of people get in on Sunday. It officially starts on Monday, but some people think that the start is Sunday when people start showing up because, I don't know, maybe there'll be tampering going on. A lot of agents will be there and team executives, and they'll only be talking about guys who are already under contract to teams about potential extensions. Yeah, right. There will be talks about anyone and everyone who is a free agent at a team that will listen to them. So it is officially tampering season, or will be as of Monday in the NFL. All right, Johnny Mac, here's where I would start today. You mentioned the coaching staff. One guy got a much-deserved contract extension in a year where a whole bunch were told your services are no longer needed. Some are still sitting there in the gray area as to whether they're going to return or not. You don't know. We don't know. Speculation abounds. One guy who's definitely sticking around is Michael Clay, who got a contract extension. Hey, I got to give this guy a lot of credit, because here on Birds 365, I was saying after last year's season, why is this guy coming back? They need to go out and get themselves a new special teams coordinator. They did a lousy job in 2022 on special teams, and it's so difficult to try and decide and parse credit and blame for a special teams coach, because it's as limited as it is. It's game situational. You don't know how much say he has on what guys are handed to him, and here's the recipe. Make up a great special team salad. You don't always get the right pieces for your recipe, and I think that was in part due to Howie Roseman and a bunch of other people, and you just have to try and make chicken salad out of chicken what. There might have been some of that going on the year before, but they were terrible on special teams.
Yes, they were. They were. I find this, I wrote about this on Sports Illustrated. I find it so interesting because, not that contradiction is new to the Eagles. I mean, Nick Sirianni often does it in the same press conference. He'll say one thing, and by the end of it, he'll say the exact opposite. So not that it's new, but this is a perfect example of the stuff I've been talking about, continuity and letting young coaches grow. And all of a sudden, yeah. I mean, if one of these betting outlets who send me odds on everything, like Saquon Barkley's going to end up in Philadelphia, and I roll my eyes, um, if one of them set up which coordinator is the most likely to be fired coming into the 2023 season, it would have been Michael Clay by a mile. It would have been think about it. I mean, Brian Johnson and Sean Desai are first year coordinators coming into the season, young coaches on a perceived Super Bowl contender. Everybody's like, well, they're not going to get fired. And Michael Clay's barely hanging on by the skin of his teeth, and bang, he's the one getting the extension. One gets blown out during the season. Sean Desai and Brian Johnson gets let go after the season. It's amazing. It's amazing. But the contradiction part is, again, he was 29 years old. He was the youngest coordinator in the NFL when the Eagles hired him. A lot of us raised eyebrows about that first staff, me included. I'll raise my hand about the lack of experience. Where's the experience going to come from? And it ended up being a very, very good staff. But man, and Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon as well, the first year wasn't all peaches and cream. Either was the second year, but people revisionist history. They had hiccups like everybody else. Nobody's perfect. Look at the Super Bowl champions this year. They had a lot of stinking hiccups in the regular season. But they persevered. I mean, there's the contradiction. It's like, who's to say if they were afforded the same patience that Brian Johnson, Sean Desai couldn't turn into good coaches? I don't know. Maybe they couldn't have. I know most fans are on that. But this is a perfect example of a guy who was given time. And all of a sudden, by the way, the personnel part of it's a big part of it.
Oh, yeah.
I remember talking about it's the biggest part. I always say it's the biggest part. I was concerned about that initial 53-man roster because they cut all their good special teams players. And I'll give the fans credit. Well, they said they weren't very good on special teams, so who cares? And it turns out, yeah, they just got more speed and athleticism when it came to coverage. And Josh Jobe and Kelly Ringo and even Ben Van Sumeren, they made a mistake losing Christian Ellis, who was here. Sidney Brown was good at it. Just young, fast, athletic players, and they got better in coverage. Britton Covey is a second-year player. For people that don't know, he was the best stinking punt returner in the league. He had the most punt return yardage, the most 15-yard returns. He was phenomenal. Jake Elliott obviously had an all-pro level season, and they finally calmed down the punting issues with Braden Mann, which is, again, personnel related. So, and this is something Nick always says, and he's right. Show me a good coach, and I'll show you a bunch of good players. Show me a good coach, and I'll show you a bunch of good players. It's the best example of that. I use it all the time is Steve Spagnuolo. Now, Spag's done a great job. 4 Super Bowl championship, was phenomenal this year, but he had a lot of good players. The same guy was the steward of 2 of the worst 5 defenses in NFL history and on different teams, New Orleans and New York. He wasn't a bad coach, Jody. He didn't have anything to work with. It's always personnel first.
The reason why I'll give Spags a little more credit than that is specifically, as we sit here today, the Kansas City defense this past year, he developed those guys too. And that is one of the major underrated values of a coaching staff: draft and develop. And too many just people disregard develop. You pick a player, you think you know what he is, he's expected to go out and do that year one, do it. Well, some players need development. Some people need coaching. Some people need to learn. And the secondary that they went so young with last year got that much better in year number 2. And that is something I think the coach has to get credit for, because if he's good at it, and Spagnuolo's been around forever, so he certainly understands it. you got to develop guys, and he developed guys. That defensive, the staff underneath him, the rest of his defensive positional coaches really developed those guys this past year. So not only does he get credit for the results, I think he should get credit for the development of the players. So we wait on a couple of other Eagle coaches' announcements. You've poked the bear a couple times with the Eagles, rightfully so, on the fact that they want to have their entire coaching staff in place and know everyone and be able to come out with a full description of the entire coaching staff, which is nice and formal and everything else. But in the meantime, we all know Fangio is going to be the defense coordinator. We all know he's already made a couple of coaching hires. We all know Moore is going to be the new offense coordinator, and he's made a couple of coaching hires underneath them. Why they can't do announcements, make it official, have a statement on their coaching staff while they go, boggles my mind, boggles your mind, makes your job more difficult to do, because that's what you got to do. It's keep up with the coaching staffs and the like. Is it just an anal thing? Is it this is the way that it's supposed to be done? What is it? The silly competitive advantage
I
thing
think
again?
it is. I think it
my
is.
God, how is not announcing a coach in February going to help you win a goddamn game in November?
I don't know. But I think it is. And I asked somebody, why, and I gave the example because I gave it here last week. The Cowboys hired Mike Zimmer and gave him the reporters the next day.
Mm-hmm.
The next day. Now that's quick, so it's often a couple days, might even be a week. But most teams in the NFL abide by sort of the, I don't know when he called it, an unwritten rule, because obviously you don't have to do it, as the Eagles prove, but it is sort of an unwritten rule in most of the teams around the league. Now, the point about competitive advantage, I can even buy some of that when it's when it's last year, when it's Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, basically very little experience, completely new to the position in the case of Brian, at least at the pro level. Sean only did it 1 year, and that was a couple of years ago. So these guys don't have a history. Like Vic Fangio's been around since Sammy Ball. I mean, everybody knows and half of the league uses his damn scheme. What are you hiding with Vic Fangio? And it's not like he's not used to talking to the media. He's been a former head coach. He's been a former coordinator forever, a defensive coordinator forever. And same thing with Kellen Moore to a lesser degree, but 5-6 years is pretty significant as far as handling these types of situations. Sometimes I think the Eagles do have it more difficult than most teams. There is a larger media contingency. We're at Chickies and Pete's every Tuesday plotting to dismantle the team, evidently, with our meetings. They do have it a little bit more difficult when it comes to being under the microscope. But come on, these are veteran guys. It's not a big deal. And guess what, Jody? They're not going to say a damn thing. They're going to. It's frustrating, to put it mildly.
The coven that is the Eagles beat writers that meet in secret and try and come up with ways to ask questions to somehow destroy the Eagle coaching staff.
Yeah, we're always trying to destroy the team.
That is funny, but it is something you have to deal with, and the Eagles are going to make you deal with it in their time frame. One more time frame question before we get our usual Monday early contributor Jeff Kerr up. This is a key week, at least in my estimation, for one Jason Kelce. I've done a bit of a 180 on this one. I said since he was over and a big deal was made about him bro hugging out his teammates in the locker room afterwards. I said, what do you expect him to do? Run out of there and cry on the team bus? No, of course he's going to hang with his teammates. And I think people were just reading into it what they wanted to read into it. I read into it. He's a good dude and he loves his teammates. And he was just as forlorn as you could get with that pretty pitiful effort they put forth against the Bucs in their one playoff game. And I wasn't going to throw in the towel just because he told a couple of guys, hey, listen, if I have a great career, he's just covering his backside. So I believed he was coming back. the lead up to the Super Bowl and certain things he did and certain things he said by calling the Philadelphia Eagles are not we when he was on the Chris Long podcast. Yeah, it was enough for me to change sides and say that if I'm a betting man now, I'd have to bet against Jason Kelce coming back as the Philadelphia Eagles, but as an Eagle this year. But the one thing I've not changed on is the timing of it. You knew he wasn't going to do anything as long as his brother was still playing football. There's no way he's going to step on his brother's limelight. He's too good a guy, too smart a guy to do something like that. We know this is not going to drag past the start of the NFL year when, if they need to, the Eagles have to at least get some wheels in motion for potentially replacing Kelce, even if moving Jurgens over and maybe getting another interior offensive lineman. So there's a time frame we're working between. The question is, when is it going to hit? When is Jason Kelce going to decide? Most importantly, when is Jason Kelce going to announce whether he's going to play football or not? Johnny, this seems like a prime week to me. We've gotten past all of the Chiefs and the celebration and everything else. Like you said, 3 weeks until NFL. You're not going to wait till the day before and then tell the Eagles that. No. So we're in that hot spot in the middle. My guess is the New Heights podcast this week, whatever day it should drop, is a very good bet to be when he makes an official announcement, because Kelce, like I said, is smart. And he's got a thriving podcast, one of the most popular ones in the entire country. That'd be a pretty good thing to be able to leak information on. You want to be watching because Jason might have something to say about his NFL future. Do you think we find out this week whether Jason Kelce is or isn't going to be an Eagle for 20?
Yeah, I mean, I'm through trying to predict with that guy. I was the same as you. I assumed he would hold it for the podcast, just to give, not that he needs a bump for that podcast, but it makes some sense, and he wants to control the narrative. He might do it. You know, he's such a class act. He might do it. They might call a press conference, that type of thing, with the local media. They might do it that way.
I think that'd be after the fact. Just my guess. He'll announce it himself, and then he's not going to pull an Eagle on you and go, well, maybe we'll give him to. Maybe we won't. No. Jason will force the Eagles to do the right thing, and he will have an official press conference. But I think it'll be after the fact.
And back in the day, Brandon Brooks did that. Spoke to us for a long time. But yeah, that'll happen at some point. Again, the timing. If he's coming back, I mean, 1 year he did it at the combine. But one thing, and I maintain the Eagles probably know right now. They probably know right now. So I wouldn't be worried about the and they know what they're doing. They've set this up as far as, I don't know if it's going to work, but they know what they're doing, and they're going to move Cam Jurgens inside, and then it becomes who's going to play at right guard, and maybe they'll give Tyler Steen a leg up. Maybe they'll sign somebody in free agency. I don't think they can go into the season saying Tyler Steen's our right guard, but it's not like they're going to be scrambling at the last minute if Jason Kelce says I'm not coming back. And if he does want to come back, I've said he's earned that right to do so. So that's not even an adjustment. You just move forward with Cam at right guard, and Landon at left guard, and Jason Kelce's got 1 more year. So I don't think the strategy is affected that much because they have both plans in place, and it works either way from their perspective. The only question is, can you replace his production? And that's unlikely, at least early on, but that happens when you lose great players. And, there's a silver lining to it in the fact that you can build a different way a little bit. But in the old adage, better to give up on player a year early than a year late. Last game wasn't great, but if he wants to come back, he can. He's Jeter in this town. He can do what he wants, and they'll accept it.
And oh, by the way, I think that's a pretty good analogy about Derek Jeter and the way the Yankees handled Derek Jeter and Jeter handled the Yankees. Let me take this stance for the 100% that is the Eagle Nation, Eagles fans. I would say 80 to 85% of the 100% of Eagles fans are level-headed, are passionate, and care about and scream and go to the games and spend the money and everything else. But they're basically level-headed individuals. About 10% are emotionally driven and will do and or say anything that they think comes to the top of their head after something happens with the Eagles. Win or lose games, decisions made, players moved, decisions made like retirement. And those idiots will say anything. And they will question and or chastise Jason Kelce if he decides to walk away from the game, because they know the eventual effect of John McMullen just stated. Chances are they're not going to be able to replace his production. It's going to have to be at least a temporary step back if Jason Kelce retires. And some Eagle fans will be stupid enough, 10% will be stupid enough to question him and or chastise him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, see, I think you were too high with 85% logical, but I don't think the other end of it, because of Jason's goodwill, I don't think there'll be too many people taking shots at him. I maybe I'm wrong.
I'll stand by my 10%.
All right.
10% of Eagle fans are just
they're
emotionally
shameful.
they're
That's
emotionally
shameful.
uncontrolled. You're right. It's
Yeah.
absolutely shameful. And I
Yeah.
said it at 10%, which means 85% perfectly fine. 10% they're just too
That
they're
10%.
uncontrollable is what they are. And then there's that 5% in the middle that are kind of sitting on the fence. And that's who I'm talking to right now. Don't go to the 10%.
No, don't.
Be smart. Be wise. Be a diehard Eagle fan. Be level-headed. Join the 85% are going to go, thank you, Jason, for what you've done and given us and the like. About 10% will say something stupid.
I hope
Mark
not.
my words.
I hope not.
There's a few in every single group, and there are some in Eagle Nation. You want me to back it off to 7%? I don't know. 10% is a round number. That's what
I'm going to go. Well, I agree with you. There's always somebody, but I think it's going to be. I'm giving them too much credit. I think it's going to be less than that. I think it's going to be very minute, and half of them. I don't even think half of them believe what they say. Half of them are just trolls.
That's all. I'm not going to try and get them on a couch and analyze them, John. I'm just going to take them for their value. They'll call WIP and say, "Why'd Kelce have to do us like this?" I guarantee you're going to get calls like that. He's McMullen on McDonald Mac Birds 365. I see we've got Jeff Kerr in our waiting room. He's ready to join us as he does each and every single Monday. Oh, I'm going to I've not talked to Kerr about Shanahan yet. That's something we're going to have to get into, John. Not only on my show, but on other shows. The amount of people, and I won't say complete pass, but are understanding and or giving some type of pass to Kyle Shanahan has just boggled my mind. I can't wrap my head around it. I'm very interested to see what Jeff Kerr has to say, because I appreciate his opinion too. Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, going to join us next here on Birds 365.